Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining this discussion about Java certifications. If you are joining this talk, I guess you are interested in taking one of these certifications in the near future. So you have a live chat there, you can ask me questions directly in the live chat, and I will tell you meanwhile why should you obtain such a certification, which are the most important certifications you should think of in terms of Java technologies, and tips and tricks, of course, for getting your certification. How should you study for the certification? What should you think of? How should you tackle the questions in the certification exam? There are a lot of things to discuss and a lot of details you will sometimes read from the books, sometimes you will get with experience, but it's much better if you hear them from someone who has, I would say, a lot of experience with getting certifications, because long time ago when I took my first certification, I think it was the Sun certified Java programmer at that time. So it was actually a long time ago, before Oracle acquired Sun Microsystems. And for a long time I have constantly updated my certifications, so I know how the exams tend to change in terms of which questions are added and stuff like that. So I would like to share from my experience, a long number of years experience with obtaining Java certifications, and I hope that will really help you in getting yours as well. So, and of course, when we discuss about Java certifications, we don't discuss about one certification, even though in general, when you say Java certification, most likely people think about the Oracle certified programmer, but you also have Spring certifications, and Spring framework is pretty important today. So obtaining a certification from VMware, which is actually the pivotal certification, will boost you, will boost your career and will help you, especially if you are at the beginning of your career. So let's discuss all these details, and of course, again, don't forget that you have a live chat there. So if you have questions, you can anytime leave a question in the live chat, and I will try to answer your question. And of course, before starting, just to know me, in case you didn't see me before, I'm Laurențiu. I'm an author with many publications. I'm a Java enthusiast as well. I have a YouTube channel. You can follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn, and we can discuss there as well. And I try to share knowledge in different aspects that are related to especially the Java field and programming in general. So find me also on my YouTube channel, on Twitter, and on LinkedIn. And if you are interested in the topics of in the Java topics, you might be also interested in one of my books, Spring Quickly or Spring Security in Action. By the way, I forgot to tell you that I will share about actually a lot of titles and materials that I recommend you for studying when you want to obtain a certification. There will be many books, but also books and materials that are not related to many publications. But for those that are related to many publications, you can use this discount code for the next days to get them with a 40% discount or something like that. So of course, many cannot offer you discounts for materials that are not published by them, but for those that are published by them, you can use this discount code in case you are interested in the next days, and get that material, that book, a little bit cheaper. So now let's actually start the discussion. So again, I was saying that we mostly think about the Oracle Certified Programmer, which is the OCP, now version 11. From what I know, starting with 2017, when Java started version 9 and started to have that long-term supported version way of delivering the Java versions, the certifications started to also be only created for the long-term supported version. So OCP 11 is now the latest certification in terms of OCP, because Java 11 is the latest long-term supported, and prior to this it was the OCP 8. I will discuss about some changes that were recently introduced in case of the exam, because prior to the OCP 11 you had 2 exams you should have attended to get the OCP. It was the OCA, the Oracle Certified Associate, and the OCP, Oracle Certified Programmer, but at this time you no longer have 2 exams, it's only 1, and you pass that exam, you get the OCP 11 certification. Most likely the next certification will be for version 17, which is the next long-term supported. Version 17 is expected somewhere this fall, so October, maybe November, but the certification I don't expect, at least up to my experience, to be released earlier than 2022. So it's still a good time not to postpone it. And if you want to get that OCP 11, that OCP certification, you shouldn't wait for the next version, because it will be at least 1 year from now on. I expect even more than 1 year from now on, until you will have a different version for the next long-term supported version for the OCP certification. So that is, you should now get the OCP. And by the way, I wanted to tell you that it's still 21 days until this nice promotion for getting the certification for only $25 will expire. This was to celebrate the 25 years of Java. And it's still active, so you can still book the exam for only $25, which is a very cheap price, considering that in general it's about $250 or something like that, if I correctly remember. Of course, my advice for you would be, if you have already started studying, 20 days is, from my point of view, not enough to study for this certification, because as I will tell you, it's quite tough. The exam and the certifications exam in general are not easy. Usually 20 days is not enough to learn for the certification, but if you have already started, then it would be a very good thing if you can just finish and get your certification the next 20 days, so that you can book the exam for only $25, again, which is an excellent price. So yeah, this is my recommendation for you. Now, mind that when we discuss about certifications, let's go a little bit further and start with the OCP, because again we started with the OCP. So we can see the exam price, so the one without the 25 years promo, is £194, which is probably somewhere around $250. The number of questions, 50, passing score 68. The passing score and the number of questions is something that changes pretty often, so it's not something you should consider as very important, and 68 is in general a very low score, and my advice for you is aim for 80 plus, 85 plus, I would actually say. The certification is something that you obtain for yourself. In most of the cases it's only to test yourself. It's not something that you should expect it will wait a lot for a technical interview, for example, because this is something people tend to believe that if they have a certification and they can present it for a technical interview, that this will impact a lot the result of the technical interview. And the truth is that the certification actually doesn't wait a lot for the technical interview. It might wait actually for you attending at the technical interview. I mean being selected to attend for a technical interview, in case, for example, you don't have studies in computer science, which most of the companies want you to have now, if you apply for a software developer position. But say you don't have studies in computer science, then one of the good things to do is try to get your certification, and that won't again help you a lot in the technical interview. I would say that in most decent companies it won't help you at all in terms of being, I don't know, the interviewers being influenced somehow about this piece of paper, but it might get your place on that chair in case you don't have studies in computer science, because I've seen a lot in the past people trying to reconvert from a specific other domain, and it's quite difficult to get accepted to attend the technical interview, because technical interviews are supported by developers, and developers' time cost a lot of money. So when you want someone to attend that, to act as an interviewer in a specific interview, then of course you don't want you want to save their time as much as possible. So that's why it happens that a lot of people not having experience in computer science at all, even though they might be good developers because they self-studied, they can't, it's very difficult for them to attend, to get a chance to attend to a technical interview. But the certification is one of the tricks that you can use to get your place in the technical interview, because if someone would say you have a certification, then it's easier to believe that you might have a chance to also pass the technical interview. But again, it's only for that, so don't expect that if you get this certification and don't know, you don't have the knowledge behind it, then it will help you in any way. It won't help you at all. And I'm afraid, and I really dislike to say the fact that I see more and more often today in for example interviews where I'm the interviewer, people pretending they have the OCP, somehow they get that paper, but when you ask them simple questions, they don't know. And of course that doesn't help anyone, because it actually doesn't save my time, it doesn't save their time, and they don't get employed, because if they don't know simple things, it's pretty clear for me that they didn't actually get the certification through their self-study. So never do that. I'm not sure how can someone get this certification without learning for it themselves, but I think it's possible, because I've seen a lot of people, especially since this pandemic situation where a lot of certifications could be attended from home. The certification exams could be taken from home. Probably people find ways in which they can get the certification and try to cheat. But again, it doesn't help, because in a technical interview, most of the decent companies won't actually care too much about you having the certification. And if in the technical interview you don't do well, which is of course very possible if you cheated for the certification, then you won't get the job anyway. So you only lose money and time of yours and others. So the idea is, again, it was 20 days, and 20 days is not enough. So if you didn't start studying, if you learn for 20 days and maybe pass the exam with a 70, which is a passing score in this case, 70, at least for my soul, wouldn't be satisfying. I prefer an 85 plus. In general, I prefer to have a 90 plus. In all my exams, I generally got over 90%. But the idea is I'm studying to get a score as high as possible and not to pass the certification. So my purpose when I go to certification is not to pass the certification, is to get the highest score possible, and I always aim to get something over 85, because for me it doesn't mean I actually understood pretty well all the subjects or the topics in the exam if I don't get at least an 85, maybe a 90 plus. And being that I always treat the certifications as a way to test myself, and it has most of the value it has is for myself, then I always aim to get the highest score possible, and I wouldn't be satisfied with a 70, for example, even though that would mean I've passed the certification. So the idea is, if, for example, in my case, if I would go now, say I don't have a lot of time for studying, but I still want to get my chance of this $25, which is a very cheap price, of course, at least comparing it to $250, which is the real price of the exam, then I would probably go. But even if I would pass the exam with a 70, I would still think about attending it again and get a higher score, because a 70 for me wouldn't mean I've actually learned everything that's important to take out of the exam. So that's one of the advice I would like to give to you as well, to be careful with that. Now, what other thing you would see is that it's possible as well to attend the OCP 8 exam, and you have the OCA. In case of version 8 of Java, you have the OCA and the OCP, so you have two exams that you should attend to get the OCP certification. I do not recommend you go for the 8. I do not recommend you go for the 8 because now you see about a half of years until we will have Java 17, which is the next long-term supported version. So at the moment Java 17 will be there on the market, generally available. You can consider that Java 11 is already a past. And yeah, I know that there are still a lot of applications using Java 8 out there and still focusing on upgrading. But in terms of knowledge, don't forget that Java is a cumulative, which means that Java 11 contains also what you've learned for 8, so things don't change. They are as much as possible backwards compatible as well. So when you pretend you have an 8, it doesn't mean you know things for 11 or 17, which will be the next version. If you have the 11, then you can pretend you also know what concerns Java 8. So that's why, if I were you, I would also aim for the latest version of certification I could get, and not think about the previous one. I'm not actually even sure why it's possible, but it was always like that. What's possible, and I think it's even possible to go for Java 6 if you really want, but it makes no sense. So the idea is, at least in my experience, go for the latest certification version, especially now that getting the Oracle Certified Professional 11 only means passing one exam, 50 questions, 70%, and you got the certification. So it's not like in the past times when you had to pass 2 exams. You first had to get the OCA, and then you had to go for the OCP to get the certification. And now fortunately they changed this, which means half the price to get the same certification, and you only have to attend one exam, which is great. So go for 11. Now, okay, what's my recommendations in terms of studying for this Oracle Certified Professional? Again, folks, I see a lot of you online. If you have questions, don't forget you can ask them in the live chat, and I always keep an eye on the live chat, so I will try answering your questions if you have. There are 2 books out there I really like. The one on the right side, which is the one from Jane and Scott, the OCP Oracle Certified Professional for Java 11 Developer Complete Study Guide, is I could say my favorite. So I do recommend you the books from Jane and Scott. They are the books I've always used to learn for my OCP certification. When I first took the certification, the first certification, but also when I upgraded my certification. So it's very well explained, and it's as much complete as possible. And by that I want to say that you won't find any book to give you all the possible all the possible things you could find in the certification. That wouldn't be possible. But it's complete in terms of you understand most of the topics, and then of course it's still a bit of self-study that you have to do yourself by reading also the Java references, as I will recommend you, and mock exams, which is the next thing I will discuss. On the left side you have a new book that's still not released in its final version. It's an early access from Manning. It's still one of the books you could use the discount code for. I recently took it and read it. I think only 2 chapters are still missing from the book. They are going to be written soon by Mala, and the book is excellent. So I would recommend these 2 books as a combination. The idea, the perspective in which you will find the same topics explained, with one consideration. The book on the left side, it's only covering half of the topics for the exam. So you see it was designed to cover the 815, 1Z0 and 815. This is what was prior known as OCA, because for Java 11 we still had OCA and OCP, and then they merged into only one exam about maybe 4 or 5 months ago. I don't remember precisely the time, but it was something about that. So when you will read the book on the left, this book on the left, it's a little bit more detailed, but designed also for only for half of the first part. So what I would do, I would start with the one from Mala, and then I would read the full book. And this is again a book, you should have it on your bookshelf. By the way, both Jane and Mala are Java champions, so you can consider they pretty well known what they write there. So these 2 books, in my perspectives, they are the solution in terms of reading and studying for your OCP 11 exam. So you get these books, you read these books, and then I will tell you what to do next with the mock exams. But first you get these books, you read these books. So once you've read the books, the next thing I would do, and I'm telling you also what I would do, but when I say what I would do, it's actually what I also did in the past when I was learning for my exam, is go and check the references, the Java specifications. So it's the Java specifications is a long PDF, more than 700 pages. But the idea is that it gives you a lot of more details. You don't have to study it, however. People understand me wrong. People understand me wrong in terms of reading. When I say read the specifications, you don't have to actually learn as you do from the books, but you just have to read it so that your brain will always work. When you read that, it will remember something, and that something will be iteratively cumulated with what you will learn further with the mock exam. So I have a question. What about the Oracle material from Mr. Strelnikov? I don't know that material, sorry. Oh, if it's the Oracle book, if it's that Oracle, that red Oracle book, I hate it. Sorry for that, guys. I don't like the book. So it's that large book that's the official Oracle study for certification. I had that once. I tried to read it. I don't like it. So it's my personal opinion, but I hope you respect my opinion. It's not a book I liked. So in my opinion, these 2 books you see here, and I would say especially I would especially stress the one on the right side from Jane, because that's the one I used for years. Of course, it was continuously upgraded it with new editions. The one on the left side from Mala is still an early access, so I can't say I had a chance to use it actually for this. I only read it and I share my opinion, but the whole idea is my favorite is still the one on the right. The Oracle preparation material, that book, that big book, I tried to read. It was not for me, at least. And yeah, for that reason I don't recommend it. And what else? So that I was saying, you read the books, then you got the Java PDF certification, you read that PDF itself from the first to the last page without trying to study it, without trying to remember something from it. You just read it. So trust me, it works. Trust me, it works. You just read it. These two books, you study them. It's a difference between studying something, studying a material, and reading a material. So when you study a material, you take it and you try to remember. When you read something, you don't try to remember, but your brain will remember something out of it. There is a new Oracle course available by Oracle University. No, I don't know it. Again, I only know that big book with a lot of number of pages with a white and red cover was itself as well, and that one is something I don't recommend. At least it wasn't for me. The one you are discussing about, this new one from Mr. Strelnikov, I might have not read it. I'm not sure it's the same material. I can only refer to books that I have read myself and used myself. So, but of course, now that you told me, I will have an eye on it and see if it is a good material, and I will leave an opinion in case it is on my blog or on my YouTube channel. I will let you know. So again, now what's the next thing? No, you don't go to the exam yet, so it's mandatory. It's absolutely mandatory. You exercise your skills using mock exams. And the best mock exams I know are the end-to-end mock exams. So they are very cheap. It's only $10, the full package. I can't remember precisely, but it's something like 7, 8, or even 9 exams. Plenty of them and plenty of questions. So with 9 exams or 8 exams, you get to an over 85% score in the exam up front without any question. But you should also know how to study them. So I will now share you the hints of how to study with the mock exams, because this is where I find my students, plenty of my students, good students actually, but they don't get it well on how to use the mock exams. And sometimes it even happens that they finish their mock exams and they don't know enough yet, and they attend the certification, and they either get a small score, or they even fail the certification. So I would like to tell you what you should be aware of in terms of using the mock exams. So by the way, the mock exams, I also opened the Entware page here. It's pretty easy. You just go to entware.com. And then you select your exam. They offer for plenty of the exams. Some of them are discontinued. I will discuss them in this series as well. For example, all these 4, they are discontinued. They were part of the Oracle Certified Expert series. I actually have some of them. I actually have these 3 myself. I actually have the first 2 and the last one, the web services. I never attended that one, but they are no longer continued. So I will tell you my opinion on this at the very end. Oracle Certified Professional, so you can just go and say Java SE 1Z0819, and this is your exam. So it actually says 20 mock exams. I didn't know they have so many. When I last time, some years ago, upgraded my certifications, they only had about 9, so it was still enough. And for $10, it's basically for nothing. And with these are basically, in terms of quality of the questions, the best, they are a little bit more difficult than the real exam questions, which is good, because in my experience, if you get something like 80% of at the Antwerp mock exams, then you get 90 something in the real one. So that's very good. It's better than the other way around. But what are the tricks of learning for a certification with mock exams? The trick is never consider the second time never consider the score you get the second time you use the same exam. So say you've learned as I told you from these two books, and then you also read the PDF. The next thing you do, you buy the Antwerp exams and you start with the first exam. And you start with the first exam, and trust me, if you never tried a certification before, then the biggest chance is that you get a 50 or less. So it doesn't really matter. The idea is you get a low score. So you would say, oh my god, even if you are maybe a senior developer, so you could be a senior developer. I promise you, I've seen people they're using Java for more than 10 years and it's still the same thing, because the questions, it's not only a thing of knowing Java itself and the details, it's also a thing of knowing how to read the questions. So the mock exams are really valuable from this point of view. So I bought these mock exams as well. I'm trying to do the exam per chapter. Is that a good idea? Excellent question. So I actually don't recommend that. I don't recommend the exams per chapter, and I will explain now. I'm actually explaining why. So it's your questions. Your question is at the perfect time for what I was actually saying. So, and you will see immediately why I don't recommend that. So the idea is you start with the first exam. My recommendation is always take the exams as they are real. So in the tool from Antwerp, you have two possibilities. You have the possibility of getting them per chapter, per topic, or you have the possibility to take them shuffled like it is in the real exam. And the idea is always take them shuffled, and always take them shuffled after you learned first. So you studied the full book, not one chapter, one topic. You studied the full book, and when you study the full book, the next thing you read the PDF from the specifications, and then you start with the first exam. And then the first exam you will get say a 50. And I was telling you, don't worry. So don't worry, you get a 40, a 30, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you get a very, very, very small score. The idea is that this score will increase with the time. But what is the mistake a lot of people do? A lot of people make. A lot of people make the mistake of first of all, they see they got a 30 and they say, oh my god, this is not possible. I actually know a lot of Java, so how could I only get a 30? Something is wrong. Maybe I was tired, and that's why I took such a small score. And they go to the second one. And they attend the second one, and guess what? They also get a 30 or 40 there as well, because there's nothing wrong with the exams and nothing wrong with them. Is the idea that when you learn for a certification, you not only learn the language or the technology itself that you are learning, that you want to attend the certification for and the exam for, but you are actually one of the things you learn is how those questions work. So never get upset that you took the first exam and you failed. At that time, the next thing you do, you review all the questions. And when I say all the questions, I literally mean all the questions. So those where you did well, but also those where you didn't do well. Some of the people, some people make the mistake of only reviewing the questions where they failed, where the questions where they didn't correctly answer. But that's not a good way of practicing. So the best way of practicing is reading all the questions, including those where you answered correctly. So there, somewhere in your brain, it sticks. and that will help you remember the similar topic in the next mock exams and then finally in your exam. Why I don't recommend them per chapter? I don't recommend them per chapter because when you take them per chapter, the same questions you are consuming questions. The same questions you will get then when you try to use the mock exams overall. The questions are no different. It's a bank of questions, and the exams are either arranged by chapter or by topic, or they are shuffled like in the real exam. And then if you take them by chapter, what happens is that you would like then to test yourself and say, I'd like to see, am I actually ready? Because you never actually used an exam, a real exam, or at least a mock exam that looks real. And you will try the first exam, say, or one of the exams that where you get them shuffled, and you will get a score, and you might get 90. I don't know. You might get a very, very big score. But the problem is that you actually don't know if that score is really the one you would have taken, because your brain, even though you might not, you might think it doesn't happen, but your brain will remember questions and answers. And it's very possible that you answer a lot of the questions just because you previously known them, and then you will get a very high score, but that's a mirage. That's a mirage because you actually didn't answer the questions for the first time, and because of that you might get a 90 then, and you say, oh well, I'm prepared, I know everything, I will get a very high score in the certification. Then you go to the certification and you fail, and I've seen that happening. So my advice is, and that's what I was basically starting with, these exams and the questions in the bank have value only the first time you see them. They don't have any value the second time. If you retake the same exam, it doesn't matter what a score you get. You might get 100%. It doesn't matter. So the first time is when you see the real score. That's when they are valuable. The second time you use them, they are not valuable anymore. So then how do you study? What's the best way to study for the exam? You take the first exam, you get that 40%, you fail, doesn't matter, it's a mock exam, that's why they are, to fail first and see that you've learned and what you've learned. And then the tool from Entware nicely shows you which are the topics where you did better and which are the topics where you didn't do well. You read all the questions again, try to understand why did you wrongly answer. You go back to the books. Yes, I know it's a lot of study, but that's how it goes. I'm sorry for giving you the bad news, but if you really want to learn well for the certification, this is the way to go. You go back to the books, you read the topics again, and then you go back to the mock exams. You get the next mock exam. And what will happen if you followed these steps is that in the second mock exam you will get a little bit more. It might be only a 5% more. Don't be disappointed. If you have 20 mock exams, even if you have a 3% more, you will still get to an over 80% in the end. So you try the second mock exam, you take a score that is a little bit bigger, and you repeat the same practice. You read all the questions, you see which are the topics where you failed, you go back to the books, you read them again. Sometimes it's good to also check in the specifications. The explanations of the questions and answers in the Entware mock exams, they also refer sometimes to specific chapters and sections from the specifications. So you should go to them when the explanation says, I know this is chapter 7, section 2 from the specifications. Go there, read that as well. Then you go back, mock exam number 3, read them again, go back, mock exam number 4, and so on and so forth. And little by little, your score will increase and you will learn Java well. And then when you attend the certification, it's very sure that you will get a very high score. So the problem is to find the exact content of the new Java 11 exam, which was created a few months ago. I'm not sure if Jane and Scott book match exactly this certification. It's written for 1Z0815. So I would say no worries. I doubt that the new exam will have a lot of differences from what it meant previously, the other two exams. It was a merge for sure. So I don't think the topics changed a lot. I actually don't think they changed at all. So if you will take the books and the end-to-end mock exams and study as I told you, I guarantee you will get a high score. So it's not a new exam. The new OCP 819 is not a new exam. It's a merge between what was previously the OCA and the OCP. So no worry for that. So if this is the way to study, if you trust me, study like that, you will get a high score, and you will also learn what's important to learn. And I want again to stress the fact that the certification is to test yourself, to test that you've learned some specific topics. Never be fooled by the fact that they will help you in a technical interview. In a technical interview, you will be again asked. If you learn the way I told you now, if you use this practice, then you will for sure not only get a certification, but you will nail any exam, any technical interview. So it's impossible then to fail for any technical interview, at least for the part that's concerning the fundamentals, because in technical interview, of course, it's depending on the role, you'll have many other questions, but what it takes, Java fundamentals, learning like this takes you maybe about 6 months in my experience. So yes, you won't take it in a couple of weeks, but it's the best practice to help you learn very well the topics. Okay. Yes, exactly as I've told you. So don't worry. The new exam, it's only a merge between the other two exams. So I promise you, so trust my experience with these two books. You will definitely have all the information needed. Trust me. Is it worth to get a high score? Is it worth to take the certificate at all? I'm studying for the exam for a month, but I don't feel that I become a better developer. That's an excellent question. So now that I discussed about how to get the certification, because I know many of you are actually interested about how to obtain it and the learning practice. But let's see. How does a certification make you better? Does it actually make you a better developer? Well, I actually know a lot of developers out there, maybe with 20 years of experience, very good Java developers who don't have a certification. And they are really good, so they never needed a certification, and not having a certification didn't affect them in any way. Anyway, they are very good developers. A certification doesn't make you a better developer. It helps you know the language better in case of the OCP, but it's not learning what you should actually really use. One of the things you need to know is that the OCP exam doesn't tell you what you should and what you shouldn't use out of the Java syntax. It's just a way to make you sure you know almost all the possible syntaxes with Java, which is good. Because the first thing when you learn something is knowing as much as possible everything about that something. But then this doesn't stop here. So once you know, and that really helps you. So for example, for a beginner, obtaining a certification helps them not only learn all the possible syntaxes, but also test themselves that they really learned that. So that's why the certification is important, and especially for a beginner. And of course, I also said at the beginning of the discussion that I do recommend you a certification in case you are trying to reconvert from other profession. So if you didn't finish studies in computer science and you want to become a software developer, at least with big companies and corporations, it's a little bit more difficult to get to attend the technical interview at all. But if you have a certification, it helps you to do that. It won't make you a better developer, it just helps you get up front with all the syntaxes possible. But then one of the important things you need to learn is that in actually in real world scenarios, you don't have to use all those syntaxes. Some of them are not a good practice at all. So when you learn for OCP, the study guides and the OCP certification never tells you which is and which isn't a good practice. So then you, for example, once you know very well the language, you read the clean coding book from Robert C. Martin, Uncle Bob, and then you will see there that there are a lot of things you actually have learned the language can do, but it's not recommended you do them. So from having a certification to being an excellent developer, there is no link almost between this. You might be an excellent developer without having a certification, and you might have a certification and not be a good developer. And I think that this actually answered your question. When you want to get a certification such as OCP, you just want to get it to make sure that you learned every syntax of the language, to know what you can use. But it takes more time than afterwards to understand what you should actually use out of it. So I took till now 5 exams in end where my score 60, 65, 68, 70 and 80. I am ready for the exam. Hopefully these are for the first time. So if it's the first time you took each exam and it's not a score that you took by repeating the exam, if you got an 80, then you should most likely get a 90 in the exam, in my experience. So I would say yes. Anyway, if you already get an 80, I would spend a couple more days and take a couple more exams. And if you still get a 70 something, 80 at those, then I would say yes, go for the real exam, because it means you are prepared. What is the path you will recommend for someone who wants to learn Java in a professional manner and take the technical interview? So let me read this. What is the path you will recommend for someone who wants to learn? Okay, I understood. So you mean, should I start with the fundamentals and get my OCP and then learn Spring, JPA, Hibernate, I don't know, Jakarta, whatever? Or is there another path that I should use? And I would say my recommendation is the following. Start with the fundamentals, but don't focus on learning all the details. Getting the certification should not be a milestone for you that block you from learning something else, because if you lose the time learning for a certification, especially depending on how much time you have, I know people who already have a job. Maybe they are network admins, maybe they are totally something else out of the IT world, and they start studying. If you are far from the subject, the more it will take you to learn for the certification. You might even spend 1 year learning for the certification, sometimes even more, depending. If you are, I know, I had at some point somebody who was an English teacher. So she wanted to change her job, become a software developer, and I think it took her about 1 year and something to get the certification. That's because, of course, having a job is not that easy to learn something else in parallel. But that's not the fastest route. So the fastest route is not learning, getting the OCP, then starting with Spring, JPA, Hibernate, and so on. The fastest path is starting learning the fundamentals. Once you've learned the fundamentals, even though you didn't get a certification yet, maybe not even at the level of what was the OCA earlier, start with Spring already. Start learning Spring. You can use another framework as well, but Spring, I think the best choice today is Spring. And learn Spring in parallel. That will leverage you many other paths. So from Spring you will start first with the very basics, context, AOP, and then you will at some point get into JDBC. You will start to learn databases, SQL, and then you will get into JPA implementation such as Hibernate. But you do this together with the fundamentals. So while studying for the OCP, at the same time you study Spring, and that will get you onwards to a lot of others. So at the time 1 year from now on, when you attend that OCP, you already know not only OCP stuff, the fundamentals, but you will know a lot of other things in terms of frameworks that are very important for real world scenarios and that are tested in technical interviews. So the fastest path is not to focus on learning all the details of the OCP up front and only then learn frameworks. The fastest path is starting in parallel with the fundamentals and the frameworks. And from my point of view, you might find out that you can get into a company. Say if you manage to attend a technical interview and you studied, you might actually pass the technical interview even if you didn't get to that point where you got your OCP, which could be excellent because usually companies, a lot of companies pay for their employees' certifications, and then maybe you don't even need to pay for your certification, which would be an excellent. But certainly never go to start learning for OCP and when you have OCP you continue with Spring. You start up front with Spring and with the fundamentals and continue progress iteratively on learning more and more details. Because remember, the OCP teaches you a lot of syntaxes, but in reality, not all of them, you will not need all of them. You will not use all of them. There are syntaxes you will learn and you'll find out they are not recommended at all. Okay, good luck on your exam then, 25th of April. I hope you will pass the exam. Anyway, again, with an 80, you still have some time up to 25th to take one or more exams and see you get again a 70 something or 80, and that's definitely enough to get maybe even over 90 in the real exam if you are attentive. Try to schedule your exam for the morning, and in my opinion, if this is the first exam for you, take a day off. So don't try to go to work afterwards because you will be really exhausted after the exam. So it happened to me first time when I attended this exam. I was so tired that I just went home and took a couple of hours of sleep. I recommend you a day off if it's the first time you deal with a certification exam. Yeah, okay, so that's it. I hope I answered all your questions. Let's get a bit, if you don't have any questions further, and if you understood my opinion on the OCP and the way you should study, the way you should use the mock exams and so on and so forth. If you still have questions, leave them in the live chat because I still can answer you on the OCP. But let's go a little bit further and also discuss some other certifications you might be interested in. And most probably the most important certification after the OCP is the Spring Proficient. They are not dependent. You can get the Spring without the OCP, you can get the OCP and then the Spring, but most likely people focus first on getting the OCP, which is the fundamentals, and then they get the Spring Professional certification. It's not the rule. I don't necessarily say this is the way to go. If you want to go the other way around, it's the same from my point of view, but that's how it usually happens. And the Spring Professional certification, it basically tests you the fundamentals, the foundations of Spring. Now, the problem with this certification is that first of all, in my experience, the exam changed a lot in the past years, and because of that, you don't have one study material to rule them all. So it's when you learn for the Spring certification, from my point of view, you would rather go for learning from multiple books that I will recommend you, and then I will also give you some mock exams that you can buy to use to test yourself. But it's a little bit less mature as in terms of the certification itself, like the OCP. The OCP, it's a little bit easier also because it creates a lot of confidence. In this case, I can say if you got an 80% in the end-to-end exams for the OCP, it's very improbable that you will fail the certification. So if that's the first time you get the 80, it's again very less likely you will fail the certification. In case of Spring, it's not the same thing. Because you don't have a mature material that can help you, same as you have with the OCP, or at least that's in my experience and my friends' experience, is that it's still likely you might fail the certification even though you've studied a lot for it. So be prepared for that and don't be disappointed if it happens. But I will try to give you again the best solution I know for studying for this certification as well. And the reason I consider it important again is because Spring today is one of the most, if not the most important, the most used application framework in the Java world. Yeah, let's go a little bit further. What we can say about the exam is that it's quite expensive, same as the OCP is $250. Again, the OCP, if you are still in these 20 days, you can buy it for $25, but then it will again become expensive itself as well. So it's 90 minutes, 50 questions. It has some passing score. I will leave you read more about this on their official site for describing the certification. But the main idea and the best thing, I think, the best thing to start with is take a look at this PDF, which is the study guide, which is constantly updated when they change something. And this PDF, the study guide, gives you some of the questions. First of all, it tells you which are the topics that you need to know, so which are the main topics. You see the main topics here, the container dependency injection and AOC, and then the aspects. Of course, probably the most important in understanding Spring at all. So you start with this because they are the foundation of the framework. So that's basically why if you go to my book on Manning, so you will see that the second book I write, Spring Quickly, it actually starts with them because of that. So Spring Quickly. And that's, yeah, I'm just actually I dedicated about 6 chapters on these fundamentals where I describe the Spring context and the AOP, and I still only describe the things that are most likely you'll see in real world scenarios, because the idea is that in terms of configurations for the container and the AOC, not only that, for example, in Spring Quickly I don't explain at all XML and configuring the container and dependency injection through XML, but there are also plenty of other details you need to know, which you will only find in the reference, and I will tell you immediately how to do to learn this upfront as fast as possible. Then you have the data management, JDBC transactions. You have using Spring Data JPA, which is most likely the most used of the Spring Data implementations. You have Spring MVC with and without REST, security, testing, and some things about Spring Boot. And also in this PDF, you will find some examples of questions. So what I do recommend you is after you study, and after you study I mean with together with the mock exams, you still take a look, go through all these questions here and make sure you know how to answer them. That will definitely help you not only for the certification but also for any kind of technical interview, any kind of if someone asks you something about Spring in a technical interview, about any Spring fundamental stuff in a technical interview, it can only be one of these questions. I can't imagine you can answer you can ask a question that's not here in terms of at least again the basics of Spring. So it will definitely help you. But my recommendation is not, you shouldn't start with these questions. You first study, you use the mock exams and the books I will give you, and the same way I taught you to study for the OCP, it fits very well here. But then at the very end, go to the latest version of this PDF and take each and every question from here and make sure you understand that question and you know how to answer it. So that's the best way to know and to somehow be sure that you don't fail the certification, even though again maybe you studied a lot for it. Now, materials. What should you use for this certification? So I again, it's not the same mature as an OCP to have one book to rule them all. That's why I will tell you about 6 books you should read. 6 books is a lot, I know, but they will help you, first of all, be as sure as possible you learned everything. And since they are all excellent materials, I can't imagine you will learn something out of these books and they won't help you. If you start with Spring now, if you say don't know a lot of things already, my recommendation is to start with the book I write, Spring Quickly, which is almost finished. I've just finished the draft for the last chapter, and soon probably all the chapters will be published. It's only 8 chapters published now, but soon probably all of them will be published because we will finish it. The idea is that Spring Quickly takes you from 0 with Spring, so 0 or almost 0. You can skip Spring Quickly and go directly to Spring in Action in case you already think you know all the important stuff about how the container works in Spring, aspects and the basics of all the things that you see here in this PDF, which is the official guide for this Spring certification. Because if you will take a look on this and see all the topics here, and then take a look on the table of contents of Spring Quickly, you will see that basically in Spring Quickly I cover a lot of the basics of a lot of the things you see here. So like in this case, the context, the AOP, a part of getting starting with Spring Boot, the part of Spring MVC with and without REST, the part of data sources, transactions, and even testing. So it's a lot of what you see here: containers, AOP, data management, and transactions. Spring Data is without JPA in Spring Quickly, but we have Spring MVC basics and with REST. No security in the end will be in Spring Quickly, but as I will tell you, I have full 550 pages or 60 pages about Spring Security. It's it's actually the first book I wrote, but I recommend it to you after you read Spring Quickly, and eventually even after you read Spring in Action. So the order would be, I would say, Spring Quickly, Spring in Action, and you can take Spring Security in Action either in parallel with Spring in Action or after, because it's quite a heavy topic. So I actually have it here on paper. This is how it looks like. Looks nice, isn't it? And with Spring Quickly, Spring in Action, and Spring Security in Action, you basically already cover a lot of the things here. What you miss, so most of the topics you won't find in these 3 books are those that are referring to Spring Boot. And again, very little on XML configurations on all these books. For example, in my Spring Quickly, you won't find XML at all. I think in Spring in Action, Craig Wells added some XML configurations, but I think it's not a lot also. So for the XML configuration, you would have either to go to an earlier edition of Spring in Action or go to the reference and discuss them. And then another 3 books. I have your book Spring Quickly. I must say might be the most straightforward for creating good solid foundation and navigate to Spring in Action. Thank you very much for the appreciation. Yes, so the order I would say is Spring Quickly, Spring in Action, and Spring Security in Action if you want to study them. So Spring Quickly starts you from 0, gives you a lot of things, straightforward, and then Spring in Action somehow makes the foundation more solid. Spring Security in Action tells you everything you need about Spring Security, more than it's needed for the certification. So, but that's good because you will need to understand Spring Security very well for real world apps. And then for Spring Boot, the book on the right for Spring Boot, it's a complete book by Mark Heckler, which I very much like. So I do recommend Spring Boot Up and Running for covering most of the topics here in these last sections. So what you find here, it's very few information you will find in Spring in Action, in Spring Quickly. There are some things that you will find in those 2 books as well, but due to the fact that the books don't focus on Spring Boot, you won't find the detail you need for these 4 sections of the certification. So for those 4 sections of the certification, I would start with Spring Boot Up and Running by Mark Heckler. And then, just to let you know, I've seen a couple of weeks ago, Manning released the Spring Boot in Practice. It's MIP. Only a couple of chapters there. I can't say a lot about it yet because I only read what's already published, which is not a lot, but it looks very promising. So you might want to take a look on Spring Boot in Practice as well. Spring Boot Up and Running, however, it's a complete book. It's already published. If you are searching for something to learn now for the certification, then you will most likely not have the time to wait for Spring Boot in Practice to be released. So that's most likely for the future. So you would go to Spring Boot Up and Running. At the very end, after you read the 3 books and these other 2 books, or at least the Spring Boot Up and Running by Mark Heckler, I would recommend you try also the Pivotal Certified Professional Course Spring 5 exam. It's Pivotal, but now you know maybe Pivotal was acquired by VMware, so that's why now the certification is VMware, but it's the same certification, by Iuliana Cosmina. It's maybe the first book to have focused on the Spring 5, on the Spring exam, on the Spring certification exam. It's quite a good book, but because in the book I think the author tried to cover all the possible aspects, I felt when reading it that the detail was not enough. It focuses somehow on the exam topics and it has good notes to refer to that, but it's not enough information. So I don't feel that you can actually cover in a book everything you need for the certification exam. I do recommend it at the very end, however, as a refresher. So after you studied everything, at the very end, take a look in Iuliana's book and again see if you still have any doubts, any questions that are not answered. Which version security covers Spring Security in Action? So it's version 5.x, and most of the examples are with Spring Boot. Again, like in the case of Spring Quickly, I don't use XML configurations, which is something you might also want to review for the certification. But because of the fact that XML configurations are not, say, the future of Spring, I couldn't actually add them, or I could, but it would have meant for me spending pages for information that wasn't so much valuable for the future. So that's why in books usually you will see in plenty of cases XML configurations, at least in the latest editions of the books, of the Spring books, XML configurations are skipped. So in terms of books, what I recommend you is Spring Quickly, then Spring in Action, Spring Security in Action for the security part, then Spring Boot Up and Running. Maybe you want to try, but it's not completely, it's only a first start of the Spring Boot in practice. Try to read it, see if it fits for you, how the author explains the stuff there. And at the very end, the Iuliana Cosmina's book, for refreshing all your knowledge. So this is my recommendation. Same as for the OCP, you go further and you need some mock exams. Never go to a certification without trying mock exams, because usually the certification is not only about the technology, as I said from the very beginning. So you want to make sure that you will pass the exam, and the exam, the practice exams, the mock exams help you somehow test yourself. The same rule as for the OCP. Entware, unfortunately, they don't have questions for the Spring. I would have loved if they would have had, because I know their questions are very qualitative. But I found two sets of mock exams, out of which the first one is my favorite. So I would start with the first one. You see here that I added the URL, and it's a set of 6 exams, which is kind of a good number. It's not 20 as in the case of the OCP as Entware offers, but 6 is a good one, about 300 questions. You use these 6 exam tests the same way I've recommended you for the OCP, which means I learned everything, then I'm using the first mock exam, probably get a small percentage as a result, then see what I missed. I read all the questions, including those that I answered correctly. I go back to the books, I read again about the topics to see that what I've missed or what I didn't understand correctly. Then I try the second exam, then I go back, read all the questions, go back to the books, try the third exam, and so on and so forth. So this is the way you should go. And if these 6 exams are not enough, maybe you want to go for the second option here that I also added. So on the slide. Theoretically, learning like this, again, the chances you miss you fail the certification exam are not that big. But because in my experience, the Spring exam is a little bit different in terms of the maturity of the certification, you must be aware of the fact that it can happen. Can we have these PowerPoint slides? Yes, I would add them to my GitHub account, and I'm not sure how to how to share them with you, but anyway, if you really want them, my GitHub account is like this. Sorry, I actually had multiple GitHub accounts, so that's why I don't know. I will basically create a repository on my GitHub account probably tomorrow or something like that. So you will have the slides. Okay, and that's with the Spring certification. So that's how you should go for the Spring certification. How should you study? Now, which other certifications are known and relevant? I said at the very beginning Java E, which now turned out to change into Jakarta E some years ago. You know, when it was open sourced by Oracle. and it changed its name to Jakarta. And now theoretically, when you say JPA is no longer Java Persistence API, it's Jakarta Persistence API, and when you say JSF is no longer Java Server Faces, it's Jakarta Server Faces, and so on and so forth. The idea is the following: the Jakarta E doesn't have a certification yet. And honestly, I don't know about any plan from anyone trying to create one. So if you want something on what's now Jakarta E and previously was known as Java E, then you would still likely go to the Java E7 certification, which was the last Java E certification to be released. Prior to this Java E7 certification, which is only one exam that, as you see on the bullet points here, it includes a lot of the things like it includes AGBs, it includes JPA and beam validation annotations, it includes it includes SOAP web services with JAX-WS and JAX-B. It includes REST APIs, WebSockets, JSF. So it's an exam, one exam with all the topics. Prior to this, in the Java E6, we actually had 4 different exams, and they are the Java Certified Expert exams you see here. So for example, many years ago, I myself took this 1, 2, 3, so all without the web services. So for example, in Java E6, which is no longer continued, you see at end where it tells you is discontinued. When Java E7 was certification was released, instead of making them 4 different exams as it is in this case, they just made it one exam with everything. So instead of going and having to take the JPA developer and the AGB developer exam, now you have JPA and AGB in the same exam. So you have only one certification exam and there is only one certification. So prior to this, in the Java E6 you had 4 exams, and now in the Java E7 you have only one exam with all of them. My recommendation is, if you I'm not sure honestly if I would recommend you this exam. I didn't recommend it. If you really like Java E7, or maybe you need it because you work with it, there are still applications out there, and there will be for a long time from now on still applications using Java EE, and not necessarily Jakarta but Java EE, because for some reason the apps don't or can't upgrade, or can't easier upgrade. Then you need the certification because you know in your company it's relevant. Then I would say yes, go for the certification. If you are just a beginner, maybe you are looking for certifications and you don't know what is certifications to attend, I would say leave this as your last option. Start with the OCP and the Spring exams. They are much more relevant than the Java EE exam, at least in my perspective. So please mind that I might be wrong. I don't know everything in this world, so I'm sure in many cases I might be wrong. I don't want to think my opinion is invaluable, but that's the opinion I would like to share with you. That's my current opinion, and I want to be as much honest with you as possible, and I would not like to say that all the certifications are silver bullets and you need to have them. I actually would rather, in my experience, because I've told you that out of these 4 exams I actually took 3 of them. So the most relevant for me was the JPA. The JPA was an excellent certification. I still think it was a really good idea to go on this certification. And on the second place, it was the AGB. If I were to go back in time, I wouldn't go for the JSP exam anymore. I don't feel it helped me anyhow. I don't feel that learning those details ever helped me about JSPs and servlets, because that's the exam all about JSP and servlets. And there is one more exam actually that Entware doesn't have here, is the JSF. Same, I wouldn't attend the JSF, and neither the web services. The JPA, however, if I would go back in time, I would still go for the JPA exam because it really helped me. It was a really good exam that really helped me stick the information on JPA, which is still, and it will be for a long time from now on, a technology used. Remember that the JPA is used together with Spring as well. It's used without any application framework in apps. It's used with Jakarta EE. It's a discontinued exam, but I would say, and that's why my last slide is here. So for the JPA, as a last concern for you, after say you obtained already the OCP and the Spring, you might want to at least try the discontinued JPA Developer 6 exam. You still can go for it even if it's discontinued, but for me it was an excellent way to study JPA, which is such a complex specification, and it still helps me. All the knowledge I gathered from this certification still helps me today, and I feel that it will still help me. And on the second place, the AGBs. They helped me just because I started with the AGBs before using Spring, and they helped me understand dependency injection, which is the same concept in maybe all the frameworks. I wouldn't say it's something you would like to go for further, but if you'd ever have to use Jakarta EE, the AGBs and the way they work, the foundations are the same. So it might help you, the AGB certification and learning for it might help you to what it's now also Jakarta EE. So therefore for also the future of what we previously called Java EE and now called Jakarta EE, and God knows what will be further. So yeah, and with that being said, it's already more than 1 hour, almost 1 hour and a half since we started the discussion. I hope you found this discussion interesting. Let me know if you still have questions. And anyway, if you didn't get on asking your question now in the chat, by the way, I'm really impressed of how many questions and discussions you had on the chat. Thank you very much for being so active. If you still didn't get asking your question, or you have a question after this presentation, or maybe you will see this recorded and you weren't, it wasn't possible to be live, don't forget that you can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn and on YouTube as well, and you can ask me questions there and I will try to answer them. Thank you very much everyone for being here with me. I hope you found my opinion, you will find my opinion useful, and I hope you liked the discussion. And good luck for obtaining your certifications, and have an excellent time for study further. Cheers!